Hi everyone, Robin here. Thanks for joining me. My project today features more products from Poppy Stamps holiday release. So let's get started. For this card, I use the Merry Outline die. It contains 2 dies, and I'm using the larger background die. The stamp sets I'm using are the Merry Everything stamp set, and I'll be doing some very easy watercoloring using the Mistletoe and Holly stamp set. To set up for my watercoloring, I have a piece of scrap 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just positioning the Holly stamps where I think I would like them in my final project. And using a stamp positioner really comes in handy for this technique. Since I will be using watercolor paper, it really helps to double stamp with the Versamark ink I'll be using. Here is an oversized piece of watercolor paper. The reason I use this is so I can trim my final panel to the exact size I need. Since I am heat embossing, I'm using my anti-static bag to keep those pesky little pieces of embossing powder where they need to be. And using some Versamark ink, I'm just applying it to my stamps, giving it pretty good pressure. It is watercolor paper, so it has a slight texture, so doing it twice ensures I get a good impression. I'm using Wendy Vecchi's Potting Soil embossing powder. It's a really nice brown and it worked well for this project. Using a preheated heat gun, I am applying even heat over my embossing. Remember, don't overdo it or your embossing powder will go flat. And the watercolors I'm using today are the Kuretake watercolor pens in these 4 colors. For this project, I'm doing just some basic wet-on-wet technique. I am by no means an expert. I wouldn't even call myself an intermediate watercolorist, but I do have fun attempting to do it, and it turned out well for this project. If you would like more instruction on watercoloring, I think the best person out there is Christina Werner. So you should check out her website and YouTube videos. She is fantastic. Normally for watercolor, I would be using my larger watercolor palette so I could create whatever colors I would like. But we are in the middle of a remodel at the house, and most of my crafting supplies have been packed. So all I could find were my Kuretake watercolor pens. But they worked well for this project, and I am quite happy with how it turned out. Once I was done watercoloring, I decided to flick on a little bit of gold. And all I do is mix little bit of water with gold paint and flicked it on. After that, I decided, I think I'll use some black soot. I always like a little black in my projects. Did the same thing. I just smushed it on my craft mat, added a little water, and flicked. I did the same thing with fired brick. It really brought out the red in the berries to have that little bit of red on my card. Once everything had dried, I used some brushed corduroy distress ink and sponged the edges of my panel. Using the larger Merry Outline die, I cut 4 pieces. Even though you only see 3 here, I did do 4. And because this die is nice and big, it is so easy to stack. So a little bit of liquid glue, and I stacked them together, which gave really nice dimension on my final card. Once you do a few of these, they're not that difficult. After it had dried, I used the same brush corduroy and just went along the edges of my Merry die cut. always adds a little extra dimension to your projects. Using my T-square, I'm putting a couple of lines on my card panel so I can position my Mary as straight as possible. I did put an additional mark so I knew exactly where to place the die cut. I transfer a lot of my liquid glues into fine-tipped bottles. It makes application much easier for me. A lot of times I will put glue on if I don't have a fine tip and it spurts out everywhere. I just added an acrylic block and allowed to dry. Once dry, I decided I wanted to pop it up on my card base, so I used some 1-inch foam tape. I like the 1-inch tape because I can cut it to any width I need for my card. Normally on a card like this, I would like to use some fun foam, but just like my watercolors, it's all packed and I have no idea where it is. My initial plan for this card was to have my small sentiments on little banners, but as usual, I had a design change and decided to stamp directly onto my panel. Thank goodness for stamp positioners, because there is no way I could have done this without one. I did need to double stamp it because again it is watercolor paper and it had somewhat of a rough surface. The ink I used was VersaFine Sepia. To finish my card, I was able to find my gold hologram sequins. They look great on this card and their coloring goes well, I think. I applied the sequins using multi-matte medium. I like using this product when I'm attaching metal or plastic to my projects. And that completed my card. I hope you enjoyed my video tutorial and will check out Poppy Stamps holiday release. Lots of great new products there. And for more inspiration, be sure to check out the Poppy Stamps blog. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.